I'll do a couple of quick introductions for both Wayne and Alanna. And then Alanna will begin by leading a conversation about Wayne's work. And then we'll remix it. And Wayne will then begin leading a conversation about Alanna's work. So I first learned about Wayne many years ago when a curator that I knew told me about this artist who was making cameras out of human skulls and using things like human blood to create Ratten number 25 filters that affect the look of black and white film. So if you didn't just hear that, Wayne makes cameras out of human skulls. It took me years before I would finally meet Wayne, and that was actually at the Medium Festival where he gave a lecture in 2016. He brought a few human skull cameras with him, as well as some other cameras. They're not all made out of skulls. And I gotta tell you, I think that's gonna hold the crown till the cows come home, that's the only time we're gonna have a human skull that's not connected to a body as part of the Medium Festival. Alanna and I met through a workshop at Medium Photo years ago. And as Alanna tells the story, she had a lot of questions for me and apparently was appreciative of all the time and thought and concern I put into answering those questions for her. I like to say it's part of the ethos of Medium Photo. And if I can give everybody out there listening in TV land a piece of advice, just be sincere and helpful in everything you do. It shouldn't be a standout characteristic in any society, but it does make people's day and it helps the world be a better place. So Alanna's work directly engages the history of Western art and specifically placing Black people into the enlightened roles that they were often seen in Western European painting traditions. And, you know, I'm always reminded in looking at her work of the Langston Hughes quote that I too am America. And I really love that about her work. And so in the past, I don't know, number of years, I've really become good friends with both Alanna and Wayne. I've stayed as a guest at their home in Tucson and have been privy to watching both of their careers on upward trajectories, which is always a wonderful, wonderful thing. Today, they are both part of the current exhibition at the Catherine Edelman Gallery in Chicago, which is a collaborative piece that they did together, which they'll talk about today. And Alanna is also one of the current recipients of the San Diego Art Prize. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alanna Airitam.
Thank you. Scott, I just want to thank you so much for inviting us here to talk with Medium and the audience today. It's really quite an honor. I just really appreciate what you're doing with Medium and the photography world. And yeah, it was really good to see all those familiar faces on the screen show too. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so let's see if we can get some work going here.
Let's dive in.
Let's dive in.
We're here for it.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep,
Yes.
good.
Oops, hold on, let me get rid of this. Okay, is this better? All right. So, Wayne, I get to ask you questions and talk about your work a little bit, which is really special to me because I feel like we have these conversations a lot around our work here, but I don't really get a chance to have it in a broader sense with other people engaged. So I'm looking forward to introducing your work to the people listening and to show them what an awesome, incredible artist you are. And I wanted to start with one of my favorite cameras that you've worked on, Yama. And I just recently had an opportunity to experience Yama up close and personal and put my hands on him, and wow, what a powerful piece. So I was wondering if you could maybe, well, before we get into talking about Yama, I just wanted to maybe share a little bit about your background with the people listening, because maybe they're not so familiar with your work and your process, and that might probably be a good place to start before we jump into the actual projects. So how did you get started making these amazing cameras?
Well, I was never trained in photography or art or anything like that. I had training as a machinist. And when I was machining, the lead man or the person who was training me when I was apprenticing always taught me to, if I was going to make a jig or make a tool, that tool had to be an extension of my body or extension of me. So I had to go into the tool that I was making as much as the tool, what it was designed to do and be made for. And this is probably about 25 years ago. Around that same time too, I started showing actually these altars and shrines I would make in art galleries. They would have me come in and just want me to build this installation that was a altar or a shrine. And then in 1998, a friend of mine who was a car photographer was doing a photo shoot for Nissan, and he made these foam core pinhole cameras because he wanted to get an effect of a pinhole camera. You know, it's a camera that has no lens at all. It just has an itty bitty hole that's the size of a pinprick. And that's where all the light comes through and makes an image on the film. And so he was having a hard time with this foam core box. So I decided I would make him a camera. I machined it out of aircraft aluminum and had titanium parts on it. And was just really elaborate. Since it was part of me, as a beekeeper, it had bees crawling out of keyholes on the sides of the camera. And I was reading a lot of Pablo Neruda at the time, so I etched Pablo Neruda poems wrapping around the camera. So it was a tool that was made as part of me, and also for what the subject was made to do, which was to create photographs. And then I made myself a camera and just completely fell in love with photography, with analog photography. You know, I loved working chemistry and the science behind the chemistry, and then creating different cameras to get different effects and see what it does on different types of film, and then make my own developers and chemistry to kind of really start messing with stuff and just see what happens. And that's how it started.
But you also put a lot of intention into the not just the cameras, but the photographs that you make with them and the installations as well. And I know that you mentioned to me before that you studied linguistics and different cultural religions. How much of that plays into the building of your work?
Quite a bit, because it's still an extension of me. When I was in school, I did comparative religion. I was just fascinated with different religions. I was also brought up really kind of interesting as far as religion. I was brought up a good little Catholic boy, good little Irish Catholic boy, but we also had a lot of Santeria and voodoo in our family background. And so that played into the aesthetics of the pieces themselves too. Because, you know, like I said, it's an extension of me. And what's been really amazing about these cameras too is that since they're made from me and from the subject they photograph, when I'm out to photograph somebody or get into a subject, the people I'm photographing hold on to the camera. I mean, they're connected to the camera. Rather than me being somebody who's shoving a camera in somebody's face to get a portrait, you know, that's a machine made by somebody else in another land. This camera's made for them. So they tend to open doors and be more vulnerable and talk, and we have incredible communication. And I'm invited to all kinds of situations all over the world because this camera is made as a communal bridge between me and the subject and the people I connect with.
Dope.
Thank you. Yeah, let's get started. This camera itself, this is I think like the 6th camera I made, 6th or 7th. It's called Yama. Like I said, all the cameras are designed to shoot a certain subject. This camera I designed to photograph in 3D or stereo icons and deities and gods, what their modern incarnation would be today, or what that God would look like today. So what I'll do is I'll go to different places that have some type of spiritual significance, and then set up a shoot of an icon or a deity. And the camera itself, like you look at the front of it, it has two eyes. The pupils are actually pure gold, and there's a pinhole in each that is 25 thousandths of an inch. That's how big the aperture is. Then the eyeball itself is sterling silver and then bronze around the eyes. Inside the skull, there's a divider that goes right down the middle. 4x5 film goes into the side. When you open it up, it's a pneumatic camera too. So you hit a switch under the jaw and the camera separates into two, the back of the skull. Then you slip the film in, hit the switch again, and it closes around the film, makes a light tight environment. So what it's actually doing though is creating two side-by-side images that are 3¼ inches apart, and that's what gives the stereo effect or a 3D effect. And in this photo, you can actually see all the machine work. It's all done by hand. Nothing is CNC or computer aided. I just sit there, I'm turning cranks, counting cranks, smelling coolant, feeling the vibration of the machine, just old school machinist techniques to create every piece. And also in this photo, you can see the air tank, which is that silver part in the middle low, and the switch under the jaw to open and close the film chamber. This is one of the photos. This is called Saint Margarita Bourgeois. She was the patron saint of Montreal. She actually started orphanages in Montreal, and then she would go back to get people to help her back in Europe. So she did these clipper ship trips back and forth. And it was just, back then, she was a hardy woman. But she started the orphanages, and she was just really revered, where today people aren't as revered as they were, that run orphanages or that are people that actually give their lives to help other people. They're not revered the way they were. So this would be Margarita Bourgeois today. She has marionettes, and she's actually on the street in Montreal in this photo. And I don't know if your viewers out there could do this. There's something called free viewing, where you look at the image and you cross your eyes slowly and bring the two images together. It is a really good 3D image. Like you just see the street vanish, and you could actually make out some of the people that were walking because it was like a 8-second exposure. And the 3D effect on it is really great. This is actually a 40 by 48 inch print, gelatin silver print.
How do you find your subjects to photograph? Like, how do you approach them?
It depends on the subject. Like Yama was a lot of people I knew, and I'd ask them, would you like to be part of a project? And I would tell them all about the project and who they were supposed to be and do some research into the person. And then I would go to their city or wherever it was and then set up a photo shoot. Other projects, I just go. Like I have another project called Us and Them, where I've been in the Syrian refugee camps and Palestinian territories, where I just connect with people. They experience the camera, experience the project, and then from that, it grows from there. But yeah, some of those occasions, I don't know who I'm going to photograph. I just want to connect with humans. And this is the installation for Yama. And like I was saying too, it's kind of set up like a Catholic shrine. So you have the God figure in the middle. You have the host, which actually is in the very center, which is the all-seeing camera. And then you have the reliquary or the altar stone, which every Catholic church has an altar stone where you have an artifact from the saint that the church is named after. And like in like a church like St. Agatha's church, Catholic church, would have like her femur or something under the main altar. And that is supposed to give the energy of it. So this has a plumb bob that comes down. All my installation have plumb bobs because that is the anchoring grounding feature. And in that plumb bob, in this installation, it's part my blood and part mercury, I guess from being a machinist maybe, inside the plumb bob. But it points down to that tray of sand that has pearls in it and a human jawbone that's in the sand. And then the saints, like at a Catholic shrine, surround the main altar.
I love what I really love and appreciate about your work is the thought that goes into every project, and that you make the camera and then you go out and you photograph with that camera the subject that the camera is about, and then you make an entire installation about it. And so it's a whole thing, and that is I find that to be really impressive.
Well, it's diving into the subject completely and fully. And like sometimes the cameras will take a year to make. And sometimes I'll even study a subject for like 6 months to a year and then start gathering artifacts to build a camera. Like this one here, this one's called Modern Industry, and it's made to focus on how industry has changed from like early America to now, where, you know, like this project is actually based on George Eastman, you know, the creator of Kodak. And the camera itself is actually modeled. See the trusses and the truss that goes around it? That was inspired by the lunar camera that was sent around the moon, because it had titanium trusses going around. So this whole camera is suspended by 4 copper bolts, which you could see on the one side, and is suspended like the lunar camera. The camera itself is an 8x10 pneumatic camera that has also George Eastman's suicide note etched in the back glass, because it was dedicated to George Eastman, and also had the letters that you see in the side chamber, the paper written stuff there. That's an actual letter from George Eastman when he was buying the property to make Eastman Kodak offices in downtown Rochester. And it has his signature on it and the land he was buying for it. When I first made the camera, I sent it to Rochester because I was going to photograph the Kodak buildings, the abandoned Kodak buildings, and with big game kills out in front. And what was really cool is I've been good friends with Nathan Lyon, who passed away not long ago. Actually, if you go back to that previous photo real quick, Nathan came over to see the new camera when it was shipped to Rochester. And he goes, I got a tripod for you to use. So that wood tripod there, that is Nathan Lyon's tripod, like an old tripod he used to use. And the head is actually from, oh my God, I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Edward Weston. So that was Edward Weston's tripod head. Yeah. And what was great is it wasn't great. You know, I set it all up and I'm showing Nathan and we're just like, I'm showing how the pneumatics work. And all of a sudden the little brass 1/4-20 tripod, the mount that goes to the camera, broke off. The camera went tumbling, dented the camera up on the upper side. And I'm like, oh my God, I broke Edward Weston's tripod head. And they're like, don't worry about it. And I said, well, I could remachine out the top of the camera and make it better. And Nathan and Lewis at Artisan Works, that's where this camera is right now, is at Artisan Works in New York. They're like, no, it's part of the history of the camera, leave it. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, it works fine. But now if you see the camera, it's in Artisan Works, you'll see this dent on the side, you know, the history of it. It's from Edward Weston's head breaking. So this is one of the photos. This is it's a 20 by 24. I shot color Kodak film. These are, in the background, that's the Kodak power plant. So the idea is like, you know, the companies of the past, like George Eastman started the very first, like social programs as far as medicine and hearing and sight, and he respected and honored his employees. And that's why they had employees there for like 50 years. You know, people that just were adamant about working for Kodak. And actually one of the people that helped me with each one of these shoots worked there for like 30 some odd years. But there was a respect for the employees. And then later on today, it's just like these CEOs just want to grab everything and they want to pillage from the company and they want to kill it. So that's why I put these big game kills in, because it was kind of the same mentality of like seeing something beautiful, something that was created. And what you do is for your own ego is you go kill it and then take part of it and have it as a trophy. So it's kind of, that's why it's called modern industry, is because it's kind of my view of what a lot of modern industry is today.
Here's another print.
Yeah, this was great because they let me shoot inside George Eastman's house. So they had it closed. I took that huge camera, hauled it all over George Eastman's house and did different portraits of big game kills inside his house. Because George Eastman was a big game safari guy at first. And he would have a lot of people go with him. But then over the years, he dropped the gun and started just using the camera. And then people really kind of didn't want to go with him after that. And I just thought it was really interesting, the shift into, he was probably one of the first eco safari guys, you know. But So yeah, this was in George's house.
Hey, Wayne, can I throw in a question?
What was that?
Can I throw in a question that came in, which is about the skulls? How do you source a skull?
Well, that one we saw was from Beijing, and found it in Beijing, and I was kind of appalled at first that there was these Tibetan skulls that were stolen and just being sold on the street in Beijing. And I messaged a friend of mine in San Francisco. His name's Tashi. He's actually a Tibetan Lama in exile in the Bay Area. And I was like, hey man, you want me to ship these to you? You know, I could buy them, ship them, and you know, because it's just kind of disgusting. And he's like, nah, don't worry about it. And I said, you know, but these are Tibetan Lama's skulls. That's their heads. He's like, no, don't worry about it. He said the skull has the same relevance as a bird flying over and losing its feather. That feather isn't the bird. You know, he was so Tibetan Buddhist about it. And then I told him, I said, well, I do have this idea for a project. You know, was to have the skull see again through his own eyes and do photos of icons and deities. He's like, well, that sounds cool. So I shipped it home to my mom. You know, I told her not to open this cardboard box when it arrives because, you know, it had somebody's head in it. And got it. I then shipped it to Tashi in San Francisco, where he had a Lama that specialized in death and dying. And they did a whole ceremony around the skull for its new incarnation, and wrapped it in a Tibetan prayer cloth and sent it back to me for the project. And also, Scott, I'm not skull camera guy.
I know that. No, I'm aware. Somebody asked why skulls.
Out of 15 projects, you know, there was 2 cameras that were skulls, you know, for different projects. Yeah. But it's like, still today, it's like, it's the guy who makes cameras out of skulls. I'm like,
right.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, did you only do that, make the skull cameras in order to make a stereo camera so that they were, you know, literally human eyes?
Yeah, but also it relates back to me again, as far as my study of religion.
Sure.
And so it was a project to study, you know, different mythologies and different religious practices. Because I mean, it's a Tibetan skull, but it'll, like, I've done pictures of Kali, but I've also done Margarita Bourgeois. You know, I've also, you know, done, you know, across the board different spiritual icons in their current incarnation, or what I would view it as their current incarnation.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to flesh that out a little bit because we had a couple questions that came in.
This is the installation. This is at Artisan Works in New York right now. It's in Rochester. Again, you know, you have the central, like an altar kind of theme. You have God, which is, you know, the kind of a battered American flag at the top. You have the kills, and then you have the camera, which is the host. And then there's about 10 plumb bobs hanging down underneath. Now the table it's on, or the vanity, was actually my grandmother and grandfather's when they got married. It was a wedding gift in 1990 or something. I forget what it was. But so that was actually theirs. And then I cut off the back legs, made a metal truss system, and then put deer antlers for the back legs too. Also, what's kind of interesting is my grandfather, because he had a lot to do with the industrial push for aircraft, you know, in the early 1900s. I put his original patents for the gas turbine engine, which is a jet engine, in the installation. So see the big wood frame there on each side are the original patents for the gas turbine engine, or the jet engine, which he invented. Wow. And so there's a lot of, you know, personal artifacts in the project itself. And that's that project.
I love this project.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say this project, I think, was one of the first ones of yours that I became familiar with, and was just blown away that you made this red filter out of blood, and how effective it is and how beautiful it looks in the prints, which I'm going to show. But yeah, maybe can you tell us a little bit about the camera?
Yeah, this is another camera. It took about a year to make. It was inspired by one of my good friends in San Francisco, my buddy David. He got HIV really, really early, and he was heterosexual. And he got HIV through heterosexual sex, so he was kind of in his own little world, and, you know, in San Francisco. when he became HIV positive, it was at a time when, you know, people wouldn't touch a glass if somebody had HIV and they were just afraid they're going to get HIV. So he got kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of shunning, you know, with people that had HIV early on. Then he, you know, kind of got to know the HIV homosexual crowd in San Francisco, and he got kind of shunned there. And then it was, you know, he's just like an island all of a sudden. And it was the first, like, first feelings of like us and them, like people being separated for a certain thing, or people like they were put over here. They're not worthy, or they're not human or something, and they just need to be separated from everybody else. And so I started connecting with different groups in San Francisco, around the country, started building a camera. And then we actually took David's blood, and I made this camera for David's blood. You can see this cylinder on the right side. It needs fresh blood. It's not as red as it should be right now, because the blood only lasts for about 1.5 years. But I filled the camera with David's blood. It has a circulatory system inside the camera. There's a pump, a rare earth magnet pump on the right-hand side. So you see that little dark thing in there. It's a piston with a glass check ball. So it circulates the blood through the camera, up the side of a filter that's in front of the lens or the pinhole, and then down in front of the pinhole with between two pieces of acrylic that are 0.005 of an inch thick. And when I was testing it, I had to, like in my studio, it looked like Jeffrey Dahmer's house, I guess, man, because I had all these vials of blood all over the place, mixed with sodium chloride 0.9% and heparin. And then I'd put it through nitrogen bubble baths, and I had to find the right combination so that the blood at 0.005 of an inch thick would have the same light restriction as a number 25 red filter, so I could calculate my exposure times for the film that I was using. And it was quite a process. And I used my blood at first, and which I had a friend of mine who's a phlebotomist come over, and she would take like 13 vials until I would pass out, and then mix up more blood, and then try it, and it was quite a process. But this camera's been all over the country. I've been with different HIV groups where they're just super excited to participate in it because it's part of them and part of me. And it just brings awareness to a different look of HIV. Because also what I do too is, like, I photographed men, women, children, grandmothers, grandfathers, babies that are all HIV positive.
How many people did you photograph for this project in total?
Probably about 80 right now.
Wow.
And still, that's another thing too, is I have conditions with my collectors that I get to borrow back the camera whenever I feel like. So, you know, occasionally I'll borrow back the camera if I'm feeling really inspired to work on this project, or somebody comes out of the woodwork and says, you know, I really want to be part of this project. And, you know, I'll get the camera back and photograph, and then the collector gets the number 2 print for free, which is kind of a fun little thing to work with collectors. This portrait, this kind of gives you an idea of what the images look like. All the red that you see is from the blood inside the filter that goes in front of the pinhole. And you get weird little things that pop up that are really kind of interesting, like all that black going around it. I didn't know that was going to happen. So I made a camera for over a year, and this is what happened. I'm like, oh, cool. You don't even know if it's going to work at first, you know, when you make this camera, and you're waiting for a year to see if it even works. And then
that's so cool. That's awesome. That yeah, because you have no idea what it's going to look like until you do it. And this is such a beautiful effect. I mean, that vignetting is outstanding.
Yeah,
how did you print?
The print, actually, I went digital on this. So what I did is I had the 4x5 negative scanned. I had it printed on aluminum. And then from there, it has 3 gallons of acrylic resin over the top. I think this is like 38 by 40 or something like that. And so it has a really thick depth, and then I sand it all. So I give scratches and then put oil paint on the outside, black oil paint. So all of a sudden you got this extra depth to it. And then I weld up a steel frame. And I feel like I'm cheating a little bit because I didn't actually make the print on the aluminum, but I don't quite have the facilities to do that.
Right. And then that is the installation.
Yeah, this is a small installation. The large installation, museum installation, what I want is to have, you know, a red wall, and then about, you know, 80 of these images tiling the other 3 walls around it. So you go into the room, the walls are black, tiling with all these men, women, children all the way around, and then the red wall with the camera and the altar. And then I have a gel and silver print I made it'll be in an ornate frame. And also that case down below actually has 2 vintage quart bottles with HIV positive blood in it. And then of course the plumb bob hanging down below for the anchoring altar stone.
You know what's interesting about your work too is that for me, it makes me feel weird. I mean that in a good way. Like it definitely, like when you experience, especially the whole installation, like everything together, you know, I walked away from looking at these installations and I just had such a feeling of curiosity, but also just like reverence and yeah, like there's just a mystery and sort of like I guess mystery would probably be like the best term, but almost like sacred in a way. There's just so much that goes into this work and the connection between you, the camera, and the people that you're photographing, and then how you put it all together, that I feel like it's you know, tangible when you walk into those spaces.
Well, I try to, I mean, I feel like it's based in humanity, based in science, and based in spirituality. It's, you know, those 3 together. So, you know, a lot of people talk about the reverence they feel like they're, you know, at an altar or a shrine. So thank you.
Yes.
Hey, Wayne, there was a couple of questions that I wanted to ask. One was how the blood gets into the plumb bob. And then the other was if you ever mix blood with other people, such as your friend. No,
it's just been David. He's a good buddy of mine. He knows he gets a call every once in a while, because even with the nitrogen bubble bath, the heparin in the sodium chloride 0.9%, the blood will still kind of start coagulating after about 1.5 years or so. So, you know, David will get a call from me occasionally, and he's like, yeah, I know what you want. And, you know, we'll have a friend who's a nurse go and we'll take some blood, and then I mix it and, you know, put it back in the camera for photo shoots. In the plumb bob, actually, I machine the plumb bobs out myself. And then I made a Pyrex glass. It looks like a big pill with a hole in the top. And then with a syringe, I would inject it into the plumb bob. And just, you know, for safety reasons too, I like the Pyrex, you know, the really strong glass to hold. And also there's mercury in it too, because it's half mercury, half my blood. Just for safety reasons, to keep it really solid.
Great, thank you.
This is one of the latest projects. Oh, sorry. I keep on interrupting you. I feel like I'm doing a lecture.
I'm trying. So S&M. Okay, so this is when I kind of stepped into really like being introduced to your work was with this particular project, and now the new camera that is being developed for this project. So yeah, this one to me is really fascinating. What's going on here?
This goes back to that study of us and them that started with the HIV project, you know, and how people, it's generally like governments or the powerful try to create a division in people to dominate them and create an us and them category, which we see huge today. And, you know, and it could be used for financial gains, power gains, or sometimes just to even kill a whole entire group of people they find lesser or in their way. So with this camera, I've traveled all over the world to different situations where there's a really prominent us and them. The artifacts that relate to us and them in this camera are like the crucifix that's on the front. that crucifix, you know, a lot of people look at it and it's like, you know, it's Jesus, yay. But you really look at it close, there's a two-headed eagle behind Christ with a Maltese cross behind his back. And then you flip it around and there's an EB monogram. It used to belong to Eva Braun, which was Adolf Hitler's wife, or, you know, girlfriend, or whatever she was. The rest of the camera, the back chamber, that glass chamber, all the glass I found on Palestinian rooftops in the Palestinian territories. There's an armband from World War II with a Star of David on it that has a stamp from the Nazi Party that's a registered Jew. In the side chamber with the little hole, there's actually human body parts from a Vietnam vet who was instructed to cut a body part off everybody he killed in Vietnam. So there's all these artifacts of situations where a certain group of people is labeled lesser than and divided into a lesser than category. And the first photo shoot I did with it was in Lesbos, Greece, at the Syrian refugee camps, and then now it's just been all over the world. Next.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I keep on doing that.
Man, what am I going to do with you? This looks like you're actually using the camera. And it's, so wait a minute. I know the camera, something happened to the camera.
Yeah.
Did it go missing here at this time?
No, I was doing it. The camera was stolen. Was it last year? No, the year before last year in Mexico City. I was traveling with a migrant caravan, and I was actually allowed to go in and be in the facilities of the migrant caravan. And I was doing these amazing portraits of you know, people involved with it and also the migrants. And we were heading back to where we were staying and popped in to get a pizza for 15 minutes. And the camera was actually in that bag that's on my back right there, covered in a tarp in the back of a blackened out SUV, black windows, under a street light with a cop 30 feet away. Windows smashed, they climbed over, just grabbed that bag and was gone, and the camera's been gone and the film. And that's been, so I've been working on a brand new one.
What I love is that you're taking the bits and pieces from that to build a new one.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, the broken glass from the car is in the new camera. And also I have friends that I was photographing migrant caravan in Tijuana too. And they were really bummed that this happened. So they went and cut out a section of the US-American border wall and shipped it to me to build the new camera out of. So it's almost done. It's getting close.
Yeah.
This was an amazing shoot. This is what I'm talking about. I was able to get in just amazing situations. This is Hilda. She's one of the mother of the missing 43. I got to travel with her for a few days. You know, the 43 students that were on a bus and were kidnapped and haven't been seen since in coming out of Oaxaca, going to Mexico City. And they're supported by the Zapatista Army. So I was traveling with the Zapatista Army and her for like over a week. And we set up this shoot and the photo came out beautiful. This was the very first photo I ever took. This was a Syrian child who just crossed the Aegean Sea from Turkey to Lesbos. He landed that day and we became buddies and took his photo. I don't think his parents made it because a lot of parents would actually just had the money to put their children on the boat and send them over because it's $13 a person, $1,300 a person to be able to go across the Aegean Sea. But, and also this print is 48 by 60. It's made out of 9 sheets of 16 by 20 gelatin silver paper. And you could see the different tonal qualities, and that's because I'm messing with all my chemistry for each sheet. And then the red letters, I ask every single person I photograph to write something from their heart. And then I will incorporate that into the print. You know, I'll scan it and then make a vinyl print or sticker of that, what they wrote. And then I pour 3 gallons of acrylic resin, let it harden, put that down, and then put a couple more gallons of acrylic resin over the whole entire thing, so it's floating in there. And what that says, it reads right to left, it says Jamal, which is his name, and then safety on the left. That's what he wanted to write. That's his words from the heart. This was at Standing Rock, taken on Thanksgiving Day in Standing Rock, when DAPL, the National Guard, and the Sheriff's Department wanted to take over Turtle Island, which is an ancient Sioux burial ground. And the person I photographed here was an amazing woman. She vowed to speak nothing but Navajo her whole entire time in Standing Rock. And we're going to be working together on another project with the Us and Them camera. She's transgender, and so I'm going to do a whole project on transgender Native Americans, or two-spirit Native Americans, and calls Walks in Two Worlds, because they're really respected by the tribe. You know, they see both genders and know both genders, and it's really a beautiful way to look at transgenderism. So I'm looking forward to that project.
Yeah, and I love that all your projects are sort of ongoing, or there's not a hard stop to them, which is really cool, because they're not living projects.
Never ever stopped. Yeah, they all keep going. This is another Zapatista photo in a deep jungle Zapatista compound. This one was kind of fun too, because I was doing the photo shoot, and he didn't want to write anything down, the words from the heart. I didn't argue with him. You know, I'm like, dude, you're good. You know, you got 1,000 soldiers behind you and a big stick. You know, I wasn't about to push it. But, you know, I was packing up, and all of a sudden I saw the Zapatista convoy take off. And I'm like, oh shit. So I'm just like packing up my gear. I'm running after the convoy, and I saw them disappear into the jungle. And I'm like, oh man. So I was hiking for hours in the jungle by myself. I realized on the truck that I was on, they had my passport, all my money, all my food, and my Spanish is poquito, you know, just super, super small. And I'm like, cool, I'm just gonna hike in the jungle until something happens. And then all of a sudden I saw something like around the corner. The convoy got stuck in the mud. And I show up to the convoy and everybody's celebrating. They're like, yay!
You got lucky.
But yeah, I didn't know what I was gonna do, you know, it was just, but it was great, you know, just great. So this brings us just such a good memory back of that.
And here's the installation. It's beautiful.
Thank you. This was at San Diego Art Institute, a place where you showed. And that's how I kind of found you too. I was like, hey, she showed at the same place I do. You could see the main installation with the camera, with that door right there, and then the portraits around it of people that have been categorized into us and them. Another view. You know, again, it's a shrine. You have the God figure at the top, which is actually a stuffed animal I found on the beach in Lesbos after a boatload of children came in. So one of the babies or children actually dropped this little stuffed sheep. The door that you see there looks like a bathroom door to an Andy Gump or something, but it's actually the UN door to the UN fingerprinting room, where refugees would come over on the boat, be put on a bus, driven to Queretepe, the refugee camp, and then they'd be registered and they'd be fingerprinted. But on the way out, they'd wipe off the fingerprints on the door. And so all the black marks you see are refugee fingerprints who just got an EU visa. And it's the first time these people have seen humanity in 5 years. And that's just a record of the humanity around it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I want to talk more about all of these projects, but we're gonna be short on time. But before we switch over, I wanted to talk about one of your new cameras that you're working on.
Yeah, this is a brand new project that I'm going to be shooting with it fairly soon. I'm not going to say anything about it until the shots are done, but it's taken a lot of work. It's been over a year in construction, and I'm pretty excited about the project. But yeah, more will come out about that in the future. It's a landscape 4x5 camera. Has already a lot of artifacts in it, a lot of machining, and a few cool surprises. Like I said, I'm not going to say much about it. You know, this project I didn't even really want to say much about until the installation, the museum installation comes out.
Yeah.
And people could actually make up their minds and have their own stories and create whatever they want around it. But you know, I think the prints are going to be amazing, and happy with the camera.
Yeah, it's beautiful work.
Why, thank you, Alanna.
Thank you, Wayne.
So let's go to your work, shall we?
You to drive the bus, Wayne.
I get to drive the bus.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo! Let's see. So, yeah, I first became familiar with Alanna's work back in, it was like a year and a half ago, or actually more than that. And I saw that she was showing in San Diego Art Institute, and I was like, just kind of taken by her work, and then started going through her photos, and also I noticed she was really cute. So she says I stalked her, which I didn't, but her images just really, really hit me. They kind of even related to the whole, you know, us and them that, you know, I've been studying for so long. And one of the first series I really connected with was this series. It was the Golden Age series. And, you know, being somebody who just, like a kid who loved museums when I was younger, like my mom used to take me to like the Huntington Library, and I would go, Blue Boy, and I'd want to go see Blue Boy. And I always loved like that Dutch Renaissance, like the Rembrandt, just like really like contrasty images. And that's what really pulled me to Alanna's work. And so if you could tell us about this series, what inspired it, where it came from, and tell us about the images.
Yeah. Well, this is always such a hard question for me to answer because there's so much in it for me. But I started in on this project when I kind of was at the end of my, I didn't know what to do anymore. I was working in corporate and advertising for over 20 years, and I just knew, and I knew a long time ago that that was not what I was supposed to be doing. And but at this particular time, there was a lot of stuff in the news around police brutality, and there were Ferguson was going off. There was just a lot of stuff happening, and it felt so overwhelming to me because I had to. There was no place for me to or way for me to process any of this, or any place for me to put this. So I was waking up every day and sitting in traffic, and then going and sitting in my cubicle, and all of this realization of what's happening out in the world. I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't even think about it or process it. I had to shove it aside in order to do my work and be present in that particular space and do that sort of code switching. And it just became more and more compounded until I had to quit. And I decided at that point that I would take the time off to figure out what it was I was going to do, give myself like 3 months to find a new job that was ultimately going to be the same type of environment. But during that 3 months, I would get my camera out every day and shoot. And in order to make that happen, so that I didn't, give myself an excuse not to do this, I had friends come over and sit for me. And so it started like that, and it started with this particular one actually. And when I saw what was happening in this particular photo, I was like, wow, I want to keep going with this. I want to see where this goes. And so I started inviting more friends over, and the project just started to unfold on its own. And I realized at some point early on in the project that this was beyond me, that I just kind of needed to stay out of the way and allow whatever was happening to happen. And as long as I did that, it worked. And it was interesting because with the costuming, they're basically just pieces of fabric that I have in a bin that I just used over and over and over and refashioned it into these different styles. And I knew that I wasn't going to be trying to recreate clothing or costuming from back in the 17th century, but I liked sort of the overlap, the sort of hint or nod to that time and bringing it into the present, because that's really what this project is about. And I started to see what this project was saying to me, and that, I spent a great deal of time in museums myself as a child, and never once saw anybody that looked like me. Maybe there would be a security guard there that happened to be Black, but most of the patrons were not. The people that worked there were not. The people on the walls were not. And so there was this removal, this feeling of being removed from this. And like, I felt like I would be caught being in these spaces that I just didn't belong there. And so I wanted to create work that looked like me, and something that could be in that environment, because I realized that I ended up working in these jobs I didn't want to work in because I didn't know that it was an option for me to do this. And I was 47 when I came to this realization, and I thought, my God, this must be happening to young kids all the time. We've got to find a way to make sure that they know that they belong in those spaces. So that's really where the project started from. And then I started to see all this interesting overlap as I started researching Dutch Renaissance art. I started to see this really interesting overlap in that time period and the Harlem Renaissance, which was basically the Black people's creative renaissance of the same nature that came out of a really chaotic, troubled time.
Yeah, I love your relationship between the two, like with the names of them, like the names.
Hey, can I jump in real quick, you guys? Yeah. It seems that we've had some people who either their audio or their video has dropped off, and other people are not having it. But if anybody is having that problem right now, it appears that if you just leave the Zoom call, use the link and rejoin, you'll be back on. So apologies. I looked through everything on the back end here, and all the checks and buttons are as they're supposed to be. But anyway, carry on. I just wanted to share that with everybody.
Sorry about that. I don't know. Okay. Yes, so all of the portraits, and there's 10 portraits in this series, and they're all, well, the majority of them, 8 of them, are saint with the name of a landmark or street name in Harlem, New
And
York.
what's, like, this gentleman is?
He's actually not
okay.
the saint. He's Dapper Dan, but he definitely is still anchored in Harlem, New York history as Dapper Dan. I don't know if you're familiar with who he is, but he is a contemporary designer that actually I believe he was sued by one of the big design houses for creating the iconic hip hop looks back in the 80s and 90s with all of the logos all over him. And he was sued, and then ended up now he's working for one of these big design houses. So he was incorporated into that, which is an interesting history in itself, but I wanted to definitely.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And it's from my era growing up in New York, right? So this was a little bit of a personal thing for me to name him that. This is St. Madison. Madison is a street in Harlem.
Favorite.
Yeah, she's really sweet.
And
St. Minton, and Minton's was an old jazz club back in the day. And so one of the things that was important for me in naming these people after these places and these streets was because Harlem is becoming more and more gentrified, and just like everything else that keeps getting taken away from Black culture, this was a way for me to sort of anchor that, or keep it in some way, make sure that it doesn't completely disappear.
Yeah, and then the Queen.
And then the Queen. And she's actually named after Queen Mary. Queen Mary was one of the amazing women that led one of the slave revolts in Barbados, I believe. So, yeah. And my family comes from the islands on my mom's side, so that's a nice little personal tie-in for me there as well.
Alanna, we've had a couple of questions about the lighting you use with software. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So it's important for me to keep my process quite minimal. And the reason is that I really want to show that this is accessible for people. And it's important for me for what I was saying earlier, you know, like it took me a really long time to understand that this was something available to me, that I could do this. And, you know, I had it in my head that, you know, I need all this expensive equipment, I need a big studio, I need all these things. Like, I am never going to be able to do this. And that's false. You know, I created this work with no more than 2 lights, usually just one and a bounce, but sometimes I'll add in a fill. And they're strobes. It's like a used lighting kit that I bought a very long time ago. So there's nothing fancy about my equipment. You know, it's just really paying attention to light and shadow. And I learned how light works on skin by just observing and sitting in those museums and looking at those Renaissance paintings. I mean, you know, like Wayne, I'm self-taught. So, you know, I thought if I'm going to learn how to do this, I'm going to learn from the best available. And Rembrandt is the best at lighting, hands down. He just is. So, you know, I try to mimic that style in the photography and think about it as like, well, what would this look like if it were just a candlelight, or if it was just, you know, the source of the sun coming in through a window or something, and would light it like that.
Now, one of my, this is one of my favorite prints of yours. And I think partly because, you know, it's like, it's just a beautiful print. And there's story within story when you look at it, but not totally knowing the actual story is just really got me. Then you hear what the inspiration behind it and the story is behind it. And then the impact from it was just like, oh man, it just fills you. So talk about this. Like I said, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
so
this one's called What If We Can Do 1963 All Over Again? And it references the bombing in Birmingham in 1963, where these 4 beautiful girls died way too young and senselessly. And, you know, I think in my work, what I am starting to really understand now is that I'm trying to correct this erasure of history. And we can see, especially over the last 4 years, how truth has been, you know, switched around and changed, and, you know, lies become truths, and truths are like, we don't know, and facts are all over the place, and history continues to be either erased or what am I saying? Just, it's not real. It's not, you know, yeah. So
when fake news is real news, and it's just, you don't know.
And I mean, like, and we can see it in what they're doing in the history books in schools, right? And they're saying things like they're calling slaves immigrants. That's not true. That is absolutely not accurate. And so I think what I am trying to do with my work is make sure that history is anchored, the real truth, and to show people who they really are and what amazing powers that they actually hold, because all of that has really been taken away from us. And so, yeah, with this, I was just sort of reimagining what it what these girls would be like had that not happened in 1963. You know, I imagine them to be happy and, you know, going to school and growing up and living fruitful, productive, amazing lives. And, you know, I know that that's not what happened, obviously, but what if that didn't happen? What would that be like? And so it's just a little.
Well, it's so beautiful. It's because of the extremes. I mean, because you look at it and it's a beautiful, beautiful print, but just, you know, it's just all of life is in between, you know, and like I said, it's one of my favorite, and it's just truly beautiful.
Thank you. It was fun.
Can you tell us about this series? This series is another one I'm really loving, and I've actually been at one of your shoots with it, and it was really great watching you work with somebody on it. And you know, just like the intention and the passion behind it in the shoot itself was really beautiful. So if you could tell us about Crossroads.
Yeah.
The first series, in case I don't think we talked about it, that first series was called Golden Age.
Yeah, the first one was Golden Age.
Yeah. And this one.
And then the What If We Could Do 1963 all over again is not a part of Golden Age. It's kind of it's a singular image. This one is part of the Crossroads series. It is another series of 10 portraits. Unlike Golden Age, where they are looking you directly in the eye, which was a very important feature for Golden Age. All of the portraits in Crossroads are facing away from the camera. And the reason for that, well, let me back up. Everyone in the series are people of color. They're not all Black, but they are people of color. And I'm having them face away from the camera because I want to invite people to look for something new. We are constantly under this pressure to live our lives in this system that doesn't support us. And it's always been like that. And I don't feel that we're ever going to get out of that and actually be able to live our lives as productive human beings, seen as human beings, first of all, and then live our lives in a way that is healthy, if we can't start to look for answers on our own and stop relying upon the people who are in charge of this system to give us handouts or to give us like the things that we need, because it's never happened, you know. And I don't have the answers of what that looks like or what that is, but it's more of an invitation to ask people, what else is there? What if we turned and we looked for something new, something else, you know, away from the direction that we're constantly going in? What if we went in a different direction? You know, what if we created something else for ourselves? So that's what this project was about for me. And it's interesting because I tend not to talk about this project a lot because I'm fascinated with what people see in it. And it's always so different. But that's why I built this.
It's a beautiful series. And you made these smaller ones with the resin in it, and it just has so much depth to it. I mean, just as far as like it has this handmade, you know, feeling to it, and then they're
objects. Yeah, they're objects. And you know, after I created Golden Age, I started to really feel strongly that I want to have my hands deep in the process from the beginning to the end, and that it wasn't enough for me that all of my work just were, you know, prints that then go into a frame and then go onto a wall somewhere. Like that didn't feel like quite enough in some of these cases. And like for Crossroads and Golden Age is now hand varnished, which is beautiful because it gives it a nice painterly feel that's already on top of the the look of it being a painting from the lighting.
Yeah.
You know, so it has a nice handprint on it, not an actual physical handprint, but like, you know, my hand in process all the way to the end. And then with Crossroads, it's the same. And the Crossroads series comes in a big 24 by 36 size, which is a brick of, you know, encased in resin, which is beautiful. I love the big size, and the smaller size are wonderful as well, because they just sit wonderfully on top of a bookcase or something, you know, and they're gorgeous objects.
Yeah.
Alanna, you're using digital cameras for this, is that correct?
Yes, I'm using digital cameras.
Okay, I want to clarify.
This is, I actually watched you shoot this too. And this was done in our studio here in Tucson. And it was so cool just watching you put things together. I mean, I was in the machine shop machining and just trying not to like feel snoopy, but it was really cool. And then I love Oakland. This is our dog, Oakland. So it's my daughter Tara's dog, who is kind of a ham, who just loves being in photos. But yeah, tell us about this. And I mean, this also is one of my favorite photos. Just because there's so much power behind it, and meaning behind it, and the symbolism behind it. Because I love symbolism. And just watching you work this, it's just beautiful. So,
yeah, and I think that's one of the things about both of our work is that we work a lot with symbolism. And so I deeply appreciate that about your work. And yeah, I think that's kind of a nice crossover that we have. But this one, you know, what was interesting about this, which was similar to, well, it's pretty much how most of the process works for me, is that I'll get an idea, and the ideas sort of come in through, you know, emotional inputs. And unlike you, I don't take like a year to research a project necessarily before diving into it with these particular portraits. I mean, I'm going to be doing some research on a newer project that is a lot more extensive. But with this portrait, for example, I was sitting in a studio and I happened to look at this flag that was hanging up, and I thought, it's so interesting that people think that Betsy Ross made this flag, and maybe she did, maybe she didn't, I don't know. But where'd she get the cotton from? And you know, so like that's where my brain worked, how my brain works. And I'm thinking like, well, where'd she get the cotton to make the flag? Like nobody ever talks about this. And so I thought, well, you know, Black women made this flag, Black men made this flag, you know, and, you know, if it wasn't for our ancestors literally slaving away in these fields every day under the hot sun, growing this cotton, there would be no American flag, right? So I decided to make a portrait of Betsy Ross making this flag. Yeah, it's, for me, doing stuff like this is not just a correction of history, but I want Black people, when they look at this, to remember what happened and who they are and what they're capable of. And, you know, if we were capable of surviving Middle Passage, surviving slavery, going through, you know, Jim Crow, civil rights movement, then whatever we're experiencing now, which is still just, you know, an ongoing story of all of that, we can overcome this. And I don't want people to forget the power that we hold and what we have done, and that we actually made this country. Without our blood, sweat, and tears, we would not have this country that we know.
Amen, Alanna.
Beautiful photo with just an amazing amount of depth, though. I just love this photo.
Thank you. And the dog. And then there's the dog that creeped up onto the stage and would not go. And so as I was taking the photo, which this shutter release is underneath my foot, underneath the dress, and I'm clicking it with my toe. And and the dog just kind of comes and sits down, and it just decides he's going to be a part of this. And he actually made it so much better. I'm really glad that he found his way into the photo.
Hey, Alanna, we have a question
Yeah.
from somebody. I didn't even know this is possible because I'm learning about Zoom like everybody else. So this is from Pooja Batra. Pooja, do you want to ask the question? You have to unmute yourself before you do that.
Scott, do you have to unmute her, or?
No, yeah, she'll need to unmute herself. That's what it's prompting me. Or Pooja, if it's easier to put it in the chat. Wait, let me see. We could do that. Let's see. Yeah, let's, oh, all right, there was a mistake, sorry. Keep going.
So yeah, this portrait, which you did after How to Make a Country. The last one was called How to Make a Country. This one's Take a Look Inside. Another beautiful, like Dutch Renaissance-ish type of portrait. Can you tell us about this and the inspiration behind it?
Yes, I actually made this one before How to Make a Country.
I think the other way around.
And the beautiful woman in this portrait is a friend here in Tucson, Adiba, and she is so powerful and perfect for this photo. And again, like a lot of my work, it's a reminder of who we are, and it's a reminder of what we're capable of. And in order to really understand that about ourselves, and this goes for anybody, this is not just about Black people or people of color, this is everyone. Like, we hold such, you know, I think that if we can move beyond these blockages of fear that come up, you know, honestly, like especially now, it's totally understandable to be trapped in a place of fear. But if we can find a way to remove ourselves from that and really look inside to see who we are and our fortitude and what we have to offer this world, we're gonna find that everything within us supersedes and is way stronger than anything outside of us. And so, you know, this is a portrait to just remind you, like I kind of envision having this almost on my wall in a place where I see it every day as a reminder of who I am, a reminder of how to show up in this world,
Yeah.
and a reminder to constantly look within for the answers that we're seeking, you know. And yeah, so she's just a beautiful reminder of that.
And speaking of beautiful, you're working on a new series now, which I helped you with.
Yeah.
I actually got to be your assistant on this shoot, and it was one of the more interesting shoots. I mean, I've made cameras out of human skulls and blood and stuff. This was a little more interesting than even that. It was quite a fun photo shoot. Tell us about this project. I keep on saying this is my favorite. This is also now one of my favorites. Your work and images, but yeah, it was interesting. So yeah, please.
Well, you know, thank you for your help on this, because honestly, I don't know how I could have done this without you, because the cleanup on this was awful. And really scary, but I saw things that I will never get out of my head. But this project, White Privilege, is a triptych, and photographed it during the pandemic, probably a couple months ago. And I think you know, again, with a lot of my work, I just get overwhelmed with emotional stimulus, and then I gotta like unload that somewhere. And this is probably the most healthiest and productive way for me to let off that steam is make work. And you know, I was having a lot of conversations with people around white privilege, and what I started to understand is that there are a lot of people that do not understand the privileges that they hold inherently just by being born in their skin, you know, and that the rest of us we have to see this and experience this all of the time. And that's part of the privilege, is that the people who carry it don't have to be aware of that. They don't have to be aware of how their presence affects other people, or what it's like to walk into a room and your physicality of being in that space, how it ripples out, you know, and it affects other people. And this is not, and that's just talking on a micro level. When you think about it in a systemic level, it's insane, right? And so it lands on the rest of us quite heavy. And so I was feeling quite frustrated around this subject and decided to make this triptych, White Privilege, where obviously we have a lot of symbolism in this. And when I'm not working on portraits, I like to work with vanitas, which is, you know, the still lifes that encompass or have a lot of different symbolism built into it, and like everything in it means something. So we have the pig, obviously, who's sitting on a silver platter with a silver spoon in its mouth, surrounded by cotton, fruits and flowers, which represent nature, obviously, and he's laying on top of a flag, which not only represents our country, but represents the law. So he's above the law. He has a mirror behind his head. He can't see himself. So he is not self-reflective at all. He has no awareness of his being in this space. There's a gun on top of the Bible with a white chess piece on top of that. I'm pretty sure you can kind of figure out what that is. Over to the right side, we have a black chess piece, and we have a candle with a black ribbon around it. And, you know, this was taken during the time of when the protests were really starting to ramp up. And so, and George Floyd, I kind of wanted to put that black ribbon in place to honor him and all of the other Black people who have been murdered by the police, you know, forever. Yeah. So because this is a triptych, we set this up in a old chicken coop at a friend's house. Thank you, friend, for letting us set this up there. And we let it erode over a 2-week period. And we would go back and shoot the progression of this piece. And so Wayne did all the moving around of the objects for me, because at this point I was like, I'm not touching the table. So I had a nice assistant that would move the platter or like rearrange things that needed to be rearranged, and I was really grateful for that, because it was a little bit hard for me to stomach.
Yeah, when we this is the second shot of the triptych, and when we pulled up, the smell hit us instantly, and we were a good 50 yards away from.
Oh yeah, at least more than that, I think. Yeah, it was. You could smell it, and you know, and this is in Arizona summer heat. So as you see in the second panel, the candles are getting lower. The flame is getting closer to the black ribbon. You can start to see things starting to erode, and the pig is now seeping out onto the table. So he is affecting everything around him. And then the third panel, he's pretty much saturated everything underneath him, and the flame has gone out on the left side and has burnt the black ribbon on the right side, and you can see the black ribbon in flames on the shell on the right, and that's the third panel of it. And then we cleaned it up, and that's it.
Yeah, it was definitely, it was intense.
It was intense.
Yeah, and this is Alanna actually shooting the first photo. So we actually, I don't know if you want to go. It's your space, Alanna, but collaborated on a piece now. Do you want to go into that right now? Is that groovy? Okay. We collaborated on a piece that it was for a Catherine Edelman's show that's actually up right now at Catherine Edelman Gallery in Chicago. And the piece is called American Decay #1. And so she took some of her image that she worked on for White Privilege, and I took a piece from one of my projects. This is actually the first skull camera I made. It's called The Beauty of Decay, where I've been photographing abandoned homesteads where in the 50s and 60s, if you made I think it was a 16 by 20 foot home, you out in this blank open piece of desert, you got 5 acres for free. And so all these people built these homes, and then they just filled it with all their stuff, and then they abandoned it. So what we did is we put it together to make American Decay #1. So at the very top, it has my print that is a bunch of gelatin silver pieces of, of paper that I made in the darkroom of that abandoned house with that skull camera. And then Alanna's piece from White Privilege down below. And then what we incorporated into the piece too is parts of that original American flag that the pig's head is on. So we actually cut out the stripes that are between the two prints and 13 stars going around. And also all the coloring and the stains you see is actually pig juice and pig blood, and from the maggots, from everything that was going on in what was decaying. And then to encase it, it has, how many gallons was it? Like 7 gallons of acrylic resin over the top. So the stars and the stripe actually float in the piece itself. And then it's all encased in a big 2-inch steel frame. And we were actually at Edelman Gallery to hang it that day, and they loved hanging it's like 70-pound piece of art.
Yeah, she's very happy with us.
Catherine loved it, but it was. I think it's a beautiful piece, and it's our first time we ever collaborated on anything, and I'm actually kind of in love with the piece, and I really liked working with you on it.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, and it's still up until, I forgot what day the show ends at Edelman. So if anybody's in Chicago wants to go see it, it's hanging right now. You go check it out. And I believe that is it.
Well, we can take some questions from the audience. There's one question about Alanna's work in particular, whether there's new work that's going to be in the San Diego Art Prize exhibition. And if so, what's the subject? Or did we look at it maybe?
There's nothing new that's going to be in the San Diego Art Prize show. Unfortunately, because of COVID and everything, it's been real challenging to get stuff there. And so I have some really, really gracious collectors in San Diego that have agreed to loan their work to the San Diego Art Prize for the show at Bread and Salt. So a lot of what you'll see there are Golden Age pieces, and I think there's going to be an Exquisite Corpse piece, which was not in this slideshow, but it's a piece that was done with Kai Essery as the curator, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with the game Exquisite Corpse, but the way that it worked was somebody would draw a picture and then fold the paper over and hand it to the next person, who would add on to it and then fold over just their piece, so you can only see just their side missing or showing, and give it to the next person to add on. So by the time it goes down the line, you unravel the paper and it has like a whole picture that has been collaborated on by a group of people unseen. And you can do that with writing as well. And so Kai did this really cool show where she invited writers and poets and visual artists I think I might have been the only photographer. There were painters and other types of visual art. And so we would only get the piece of writing. I only got like a piece of writing from the last writer that was sent to me, and I had to create a piece around that. And without knowing what any of it was about. And so at the end, when we saw the whole show, it told a story, which was really cool. So that piece will be at the San Diego Art Prize show.
Oh, that's great. Forward to that. What do you know when the show opens?
September 3rd. Not sure. September 3rd, I think.
Okay, coming up at Bread and Salt, right?
Yes.
In Barrio Logan in San Diego.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask a question really on behalf of everybody, which is, what's the best way for people to follow your work? You know, we all have our platforms, right? Some people have Facebook, Instagram, whatever. I mean, email. What works best for us to keep up with you guys?
Wayne?
I'd say right now, Instagram. We're actually working on a brand new website for me. It's getting close to done. It's looking really kind of cool and badass.
This is a website of your work?
What was that?
This is a website of your work?
Yeah.
In other words, your website. Okay. Just clarifying.
Yeah, it's a website of my work. I had another website, and everything needed to be redone. But yeah, I'd say we're just even like a couple weeks away from it just going live, which is actually at WayneMartinBelger.com. Pretty easy. But Instagram, I'm always posting updates and stuff.
And then there's another question: how are you planning to continue your work with COVID in mind? Because it's likely going to impact us for a long time.
Mm-hmm. I've got September 4th. Thank you, Patricia. Bread and Salt, the San Diego Art Prize is September 4th. Thank you. I've got a new project that I am so desperate to start working on, but it's going to take me to North Carolina for a little bit. And I've kind of been putting it off to see how this COVID thing is going to work out, but I think I agree with you. Like it's going to be here for a little while, so I might just go and do it. It is on a piece of property that my aunts now own, but my ancestors were enslaved on this property. It's over 6,000 acres of land, and there are two neighboring plantations that actually have a story that connects both of the plantations. And there are houses, the plantation house and the slave quarters are still standing on the second piece of land. And I will be living on the first piece of land and collecting a lot of data and research. And there's just so much, there are so many stories there. And I feel really compelled to do this for my family, to secure the history for my family. But also it's just a phenomenal story. My great-great-grandfather, I have to figure this out. One of the greats, he was born on that land as the product of one of the enslaved women and the slave owner. And he grew up and would creep next door to the neighboring plantation and hook up with the plantation owner's daughter. And they fell in love and ran away to Pennsylvania, where you could legally get married. And that sort of was the beginning of my modern family now. There's a lot of really interesting story in there. And because my aunts still live on this land, I have been invited to spend some time there and see what it's all about. I'm very, very excited about that.
That's great. And your website, Alanna?
My website is AlannaAiritam.com.
Okay, great. Somebody also asked if you guys have more collaborations in the works.
Not at the moment, but I think we both really enjoyed it, and we've been kind of like, we have the idea thing rolling now. So I would say yes, there will be. And it's kind of fun because, I have my career. I've been doing this for 22 years now. Alanna has her career, and we're both really focused on and passionate about what we do.
Yeah.
And then we came together, and it was just really gelled really nicely, and it was fun to create together. So I could see having almost like a third artist, a third entity, and just being its own thing occasionally that we do.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm excited by that. I think it's going to be really.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I think somebody commented a bit earlier, kind of in the heart of the conversation, that it was really interesting to see the kind of mutual influence and in the collaboration, but also just in your own work, right? From working together and watching, the inspiration flow back and forth, which I think is evident for those of us who are not either Alanna or Wayne.
This has been the first time I've actually, had a partner that, I just had so much flow with in work, and passionate about like a lot of the same things that drive us to create the work. And like I said, I love watching her shoot. I love being there when she's creative and just in a flow. And and then I'll come out with some camera part I made, and she's like, ah.
It's interesting too, to listen to you guys and to hear, this remix, right, of inviting questions and leading us through each other's work. Because I'm reminded of the notion that photography, there's like two kinds of photography in some regards, that, there are photographers who are outsiders and there's photographers who are insiders. And, neither one is good or bad, right or wrong. But it allows you different access points. And it's really interesting to think about that in each of your work, and how you both bring such an amazing sense of activism and passion and life experience to the work. And it's powerful. And it's really nice to see in collaboration in a format like this.
Thank you.
Well, we're enjoying it.
I appreciate that. I feel, because I feel very strongly, I'm an activist first, and I just happen to choose this as my medium of expression. But yeah, my work will always be about fighting the power, trying to find some balance in this chaos,
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, I'm come from the same roots. I grew up in LA in the punk scene, in the early 80s, and we went to more protests than we did concerts, at times. And so I've always had that background. I always thought of myself as more of an activist than an artist. And I like how Alanna and I both basically have the same foundation, within our work, even though, she's digital, I'm analog, it's like our contrasts are huge,
Mm-hmm. Right.
but the foundation is the same. And it's I couldn't think of a more perfect match.
Yeah.
Yay.
Questions from the audience
Mm-hmm.
out there? People can type them into the Q&A, or apparently there's some way to raise your hand and then we can hear your voice too. But yeah, it's been really fantastic. Thank you guys for this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. And I love Medium San Diego. I've done a lot of different lectures at different places, and I always brag about how, like, Scott at Medium, that event is just so great and so nice, and yeah, just had a blast, and just great people too.
Yeah, when you lectured in 2016, that was our first year as a nonprofit, and I like to say that was the beginning of it no longer being Scott, because we have a board of directors, and there's more. It's more than me. I appreciate it. I know I'm the founder of the organization, but no, it's really it's fantastic to have this community, right, and to keep these relationships alive, and in a case like this, to be able to share it, through our private homes and out into the world.
Yeah. And thank you for creating that, Scott.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So any other questions? Any other Q&As? Or
let's see. How is Alanna liking Arizona?
Wait, is that an actual question?
Yeah.
How am I liking Arizona?
Yeah. Yeah. How did you end up there, actually? But
How did I end here? Well, let's see. How did I end up here?
Partially because of Wayne, sure.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Wayne had a lot to do with it. And, I really love San Diego, and I will always say this. I love the San Diego art community. It is a rare community from what I have experienced, in that people seem very supportive of each other there. And I mean, it's not always perfect, but it's really good. And I miss that. I miss the talks and the collaborations and the shows where I get to see all of your beautiful faces. So just wanted to throw that out there. And I was really sad to leave San Diego because my rent in my place was going up, and like a lot. And there was no way for me to afford that. And I also realized at that point that my work was going to start taking a toll, like not having the space that I needed to actually do more with my work, and my work was going to start to suffer because of that. So I needed to go someplace where I could have more space to work. And Wayne was like, well, why don't you come check out Tucson, And so I thought, sure, yeah, why not? And I came here, and it's been amazing, and we have an incredible workspace, and as you can see, we work really well together. So it's been wonderful. And San Diego's only 5 hours away by car, so
yeah,
I still get there quite often.
And there's a lot to love in Tucson too. I'm just going to put that out there.
There is a lot to love in Tucson.
People, landscape,
Yeah, Scott is a big Tucson fan.
Yes,
yeah, I am.
So am I.
Well, I think this is probably a good place to end it, and to say an official thank you to both of you, and thank you to everybody for joining us. It was really
thank you.
An enriching conversation all around.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, everybody, it's hot no matter where you are. I think unless you're in Death Valley, Alanna and Wayne have the hot, they take the crown for being hot.
Yeah, it's cool.
Warm everywhere. It's hot and windy in San Diego. But enjoy what we can of the weekend. Probably means staying indoors and having a little AC. But it's been a great conversation, you guys.
Okay. Thank you, Scott.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.